Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com's Daily Brief Recap. Not a heck of a lot new going on in the market today, so I'm really gunning for a nice 10 minutes here. Who knows? Brian will probably talk for a half an hour, but I'll try my best. Here we go. Broader market. And for whatever it's worth, I'm Canadian, so I've included in the analysis here today the Canadian dollar. Kind of an interesting conversation. We talk lots, of course, on these videos about U.S. dollar and sort of risk on, risk off. What does it mean? The most recent weekly price chart we talked about, and it came in fairly aggressively. We got a nice fractal top here on the US dollar index. Big rally in the British pound, big rally in the euro. You can see the Canadian dollar itself has enjoyed a pretty nice rally. The only problem I have with all of this is that there's not really any new fundamentals that are driving things like the British pound and the euro rally. If I understand correctly, there's more talk about Brexit and all that kind of stuff and humming and hawing and votes and stuff having to be cast. So that certainly isn't a done deal. We'll see how that goes. I think also, too, this is just a general sort of sentiment, feeling that the market's feeling a little bit more risk-on-y. And as we'll talk about stocks in a minute, you'll see that. For whatever it's worth, and actually I spent a lot of time in the daily brief today going through all the levels on the Canadian dollar. I think you can actually make the argument that we're at a fairly interesting higher time frame trade location for the Canadian dollar. You can see the internals just look like an absolute train wreck. But over the short term, we do have, these are monthly charts. Considering trade location, it's encouraging to see that if you look at like the monthly MACD indicator, you can see the cute little W and it trying to work its way higher. So we got, the makings of a short-term rally going on here. So that's encouraging. If we drill down to the weeklies, you can see that we ran into this reload zone a couple times and the market just wasn't interested in going any lower. This is that higher time frame reload long zone. So reload zones within reload zones make sense. Market turns. And we've been going through the process of trying to find a bottom here. In Canada, as I said, we had an election overnight. The ruling government body was a majority. They lost the majority. They're now a minority, which means they don't have carte blanche to go and just pass through legislation that they want to willy-nilly. And they're going to have to be held to a little bit, more strict fiscal discipline with the Conservatives, the more right-wing party, gaining as many seats as they did. So on the short-term basis, I am thinking uppy, but I'm worried that we've come right into actually a classic sort of selling zone. You can see 78.6 reload zone, the original market structure top up top here. You can see the M. In fact, you could even draw a horizontal line right off of this. So not a big surprise we're running into a brick wall of resistance right here. There is a cheeky little gap right there as well. So we've come up against also a downtrend line. So we've got original market structure. We have 78.6 line in the sand, top of the reload zone. We have a trend line, and we're above value. You can see buyers are not really coming in too aggressively up top here. So I do like the prospects for the Canadian dollar over the medium term. Big weekly W's coming in. I'm just worried that this was a buy the rumor. And then what do we usually get at trend lines? Remember, we have to wait for the market to W on the other side of the trend line for us to believe that it's been broken. And you can see all we're doing is dojiing here today. So interesting conversation we had about the Canadian dollar here today in the daily brief. Risk on, risk off. Woke up this morning and I was quite surprised to see things like American Barrick, biggest gold stock in the world, breaking to new lows here this morning. Gold stocks themselves still carving out this descending wedge. And we spent a lot of time in the Daily Brief today talking about a couple, one gold and one silver name that I'm keeping a close eye on. Because we are technically coming into actually a friendly period of the market for the metals. So, but that usually happens about the middle of October, well, the end of October, beginning middle of November. You can see the seasonal trough in here for the gold. So you can see silver, it takes usually to the end of November for that trough to actually officially come in. So through sort of the end of October, through early part of November, I am watching the gold and silver stocks. And as I said, you know, does Barrick have to come down over the next month into reload zone? Excuse me, could be. But at the same time, too, if and when that does happen, I think it represents a fantastic buying window. So there are a number of gold and silver names I'm keeping a close eye on. But, you know, as for the short term right now, this is definitely a risk-off type of market. You know, usually to begin the day, I like to load up my, where the hell is it? There we are. Risk on, risk off. You can see risk off actually was catching a little bit of a bid here this morning. Risk on, there's the oil. It was up a little higher this morning, so gold was actually a little bit lower. But you can see the W that's coming in on the oil finally. I was wondering when this was going to come in. And then the question ultimately is Bitcoin a leading indicator? And it did W, but then it rolled over and broke to new lows. Is that what we should expect out of the other risk-on proxies? Tough to say. Was talking yesterday about the oil stocks, and I noticed a bunch of them look very uppy this morning. We spent some time in the Daily Brief going through them. And I pointed out yesterday Halliburton had a huge upside reversal. So still looking for uppy, and it's interesting. Stock market's come right up against the top end of its range. Spent a bit of time in the Daily Brief this morning looking at all the various different levels in the U.S. stock indexes. We finally filled in this gap on the S&Ps, which was driving me crazy, this little gap up top. I went and bought some puts, and I bought another put here last week, so I'm loaded up on the puts. I really don't have anything more to buy there now. And believe it or not, I'm still thinking about a cycle trough sometime around the end of October. But this trough might just be a really tempered one. Tough to say. You never know in this crazy business. But we did spend a lot of time in the Daily Brief today talking about longer term levels and how this whole top actually came in right off a 113 fib extension. So not really too surprising. And if we do accept above this 113, where are our next extension targets on the stock market? So we will see. I mean, risk on looks pretty uppy here. Risk off, as we talked about, looking pretty heavy. I've got my bond put trade working. I'm not going to touch it, just leave it alone. My target's down in here. And as I said just a few minutes ago, if gold and silver do fall out of bed, I'd actually consider that a buying opportunity for probably, probably sometime mid-November. Heading over to crypto, not a heck of a lot to talk about here about Bitcoin. This is a weekly price chart, and you can see over the past 4 or 5 weeks, we've just stopped. And as I was sort of talking about in Daily Briefs today, it looks to me like, where's the chart I want to show you? Fudge. I lost my train of thought. Oh, well. What the heck did I do with it? I guess it was over here, wasn't it? I put this out on the site this morning. I love to do this. It drives people crazy. Welcome to your new trading range. 77.15, roughly the downside of this market. These lows here, of course, 77.1470. So that's why I painted that number. 88.20, that's the high of this bar. 88.20 on the nose. See, moving averages are going to be just a massive brick wall of resistance, and then the previous market structure failure, 90.49. So I think that's basically top end of the range. You can see the notch in the profile. We could rally up into here. Of course, all the FOMOers will be piling in on the long side, and the institutions will be saying thank you very much for those fills and getting short. We have to be worried about moving averages crossing bearishly here and actually painting actually a bearish trend here. So that's always floating out there. And on the downside, we got Mountain Man just sitting there at about 7,200 and change. We've got this AB equals CD that's at about 7,500. And like I said just a moment ago, we got the bottom of our range 7,700. So really, at best, my thinking here for the corn is we're sort of trapped in this trading range. And until this resolves itself, there just isn't anything to do for investors. Terrible, terrible trading range location here, either to short or to buy. This is a really, really bad trade location in my opinion. So that's your update on the corn. Woohoo! Pretty exciting stuff. I was really interested over the past few weeks when I started to pull up a lot of these altcoin charts, and I started looking at them versus Bitcoin and seeing weekly W's coming in. Also looking at these names versus USD. This is one of the names that actually is listed in US dollars on Trex. Trying to form fractals down at the bottom here, but a fractal is the start of a bottom. Really, ultimately, we'd like to see W's. But this is relative to Bitcoin, this little Zen. I think we talked about it yesterday. I can't remember, but this is versus USD. In the process of bottoming, I guess is the best way that I would describe this. I think we're a lot closer to the bottom than the top. And I've also included 3 other names that look kind of interesting again here. What I really like if I'm thinking about hunting bottoms is I want to see these markets actually flatline. Just literally go flat. Nobody's interested in them whatsoever anymore. I think I showed you guys a Verge chart from like 5 years ago where it just went absolutely flat into what we call a narrow sideways channel, and it just sat there for like 6 months. And then, slowly broke out and started its crazy ass run up top. So I do like what I'm seeing, and I was very encouraged by a lot of our sort of, crypto diehard enthusiasts on the site. They were saying they were going in and taking some long shots off of these bottoms. As always, I think it's a good idea to be skeptical first. If you want to nanny nibble little old lady your way into these, 0.5%, 1% of your stake kind of purchases down here, totally fine by me. If we want to, a little higher octane, take some risk, then I think you ought to think about things like setups, W's. And as we sort of talked about recently, a really good example, Doge, try not to chase and just be patient, work your bid against things like reload zones and original market structure, and just accumulate here, because I think there's some really interesting stories to be accumulated over the last maybe 2 or 3 months of 2019. We'll finish off today. What's sort of the proxy in this space that I like to sort of tell me about sentiment in altcoins? This is the BNB coin. And if Binance is rocking and rolling, then it probably means altcoins are pretty happy. I've drawn some simple levels here. First and foremost, kind of like what we did on that Canadian dollar. Interesting thing is if you zoom out on BNB, I think you can actually make the argument that we're coming back down into acceptable trade location. Green boxes, reload zones, original structural breakout. The problem here, of course, is this was a V bottom straight up. So where the hell is the W? So that's always a concern. But you can see how we dipped into this green box, reload zones, all that kind of talk. If we go back down to that daily chart, you can see the W that came in here, down, up, down, breakout. Problem is, do you really want to go and buy up top here? You see where the reload zone is. Maybe we trend continuation our way higher here. Could be. But for the time being, I'm just sort of thinking that any kind of dumps back into reload zones, I would consider them sort of buying opportunities to be able to risk against these lows. And that's sort of the state of altcoins right now, in my opinion. A little bit late to be a buyer. Way too late to be a seller. Maybe you should have been thinking about hopping off up top here. But, we're starting to come into areas now, especially down in these green boxes, where, I think actually the risk is worth seriously considering. All right, so there's your market update. Who knows how long I was. It's a relatively quiet day in the market, so hope you enjoyed yourself. Congratulations to all the various politicians in Canada who either lost their jobs or got new jobs or kept their jobs. Have yourselves a great day, everybody. All the best, and bye for now.